So we've talked a lot here on Beat the Press about how skeptical Americans are of the media, and 2016 was a low point. That year, Gallup found just 32% of people said they trusted the press. But now there's a concerted effort to combat that distrust, and it's gaining momentum. Adam has more.
The premise of the Trusting News Project is pretty simple. Public trust in the press can be regained, but only if we work at it.
If we made it part of our public message that we want to hear from people and that earning trust is important to us, imagine what that could be.
That's one idea from Project Director Joy Mayer. She and her colleagues have a lot more. As of this month, 30 news organizations have signed on. Among them, the Christian Science Monitor, where editor Mark Sappenfield says the issue of trust is especially pressing.
We feel like we're there to be a resource, to be something for our readers to use to make their lives in the world better. They need to trust what you are doing in order to get that value out of us.
Lately, Sappenfield says he's felt pressure from readers to tack to the left and the right. Joining the Trusting News Project is a way to respond.
There's a newspaper in Iowa that's participating in this, and they're able to really talk with people in a really intimate way. It's almost on a person-to-person level. You can learn something from that because we want our readers to feel like the Monitor is a small town.
It's hard not to be a bit skeptical, particularly with the president leading the anti-media charge. But Sappenfield says he's optimistic.
What President Trump is saying is not new. There has been a crisis in trust in the media, and in some ways, I would rather have it out in the open and have these things come up to try and address it than have it be kind of down and just in the talk news circuit.
And it's definitely out in the open right now.
So one of the reasons I'm skeptical, Adam, is because last week on this show we talked about that Knight Foundation study that said people trust the news outlet that they go to. So if it's Fox, they trust Fox. If it's CNN, they sort of. So how are you going to get somebody to switch their habits, reading, viewing, and then, oh, yeah, I really trust that Christian Science Monitor?
I was deeply skeptical going in, but what I think is interesting about this project, and it's a little hard to understand, a little amorphous, they've got a whole bunch of different strategies they want the organizations they're working with to try. Taking people behind the scenes in the newsroom, saying, you know, here's Emily Rooney, this is what she does, here's Kelly Krause, this is what she does. Explaining to people concepts that we take for granted, like the split between the business side and the editorial side. Essentially, they want people discussing the work we do as much as they can, as often and transparently as they can with readers, and then they're going to get all the data back from people who are working with them and crunch the numbers to see what works and what doesn't. That's what I found interesting about this. It's not just try this because it feels like a good idea or we know there's a trust issue. It's we're going to get data that shows us how we can make this work and you know, the approaches that don't fit. It is worth noting, I think, that trust has ticked up in the last year from, 32% to 41% of Americans who say that they trust the press a lot or a little. So maybe the picture is not quite as bleak as you and I both think.
But to pick up on what Emily said, and this, you can find surveys going back several years saying this, the idea that people distrust the media is misunderstood. They trust the media that they use. Right. This is very well-meaning. I like the idea of more transparency. We talk about our methods. I noticed that they gave a shout-out to David Fahrenthold of the Washington Post, who's been very open about how he goes about doing his job. I hope that some good comes out of this. But I have to say, it sounds very much like initiatives going back to the public journalism movement of the 1990s. And some interesting things come out of that, and sometimes you do get improvement in your methods, but ultimately I think the impact is rather small.
I would just say that a lot of things have changed since then. I know that it looks like some things are repeated, but I think this is being reshaped and refashioned for these times. So now there's a lot more communication than there ever was between viewers and listeners and those reporters. So there's that. In terms of trusting the media, you know, look at the list of people who've signed up, and they are a lot of local stations. So they're trying to figure out how best we can get from our viewers and listeners, which they have asked, what is it about us that makes you trust this? I think that's very important. One thing that showed up on one of their 7 strategies that I got to say I would never think of, that people are confused about if there are sides being presented. If you say that you are getting all sides, we don't see that. And so one of the strategies they're talking about is saying, it's having the reporters articulate more clearly on this side or an opposing view or whatever language we need to highlight that these are actually opposing positions. I got to say, that's not something I'm going to be sitting up thinking that somebody is not getting and therefore not trusting what I am saying. So what's the harm in trying that?
Call me old-fashioned, and perhaps cynical about the whole process, but I just feel like I wish that money could just go to writing, to journalists, to write really good stories, to get great scoops, and that's how you build trust with an audience. I mean, I think it's, I'm sure, I don't think this will translate into a whole wave of new subscribers or viewers for TV stations. It doesn't seem like rocket science in a way that you can tell people this is how we offer transparency to your readers or to your viewers. It doesn't seem like you need a grant or initiative to do it.
Well, just to be clear, the money is not being spent by the news organizations.
Right.
The money is being given to the people who are working on this.
Right.
And
I'm just saying use that money to fund journalism.
I'm a little concerned about the emphasis on balance. Balance sounds great. Balance is good. We all love balance. Ultimately, we are supposed to be about pursuing the truth. And what do we balance against the truth?
I did not pick up a big emphasis on balance as the goal to which they want to aspire when I was looking at the Trusting News Project's material. I don't think that's a core
But you said
part
that the Christian Science Monitor, they get criticism that they either want to go
the
farther
Christian
left or
Science
farther
Monitor,
right.
as you know, has this
Yeah.
special philosophy of giving people news they can use to make their lives better. That was a point unique to the Christian Science
Yeah.
Monitor. I don't think that the big goal of Trusting News is making people think that they're getting balanced reports.
And everybody already trusts the Christian Science Monitor. They're one of the most trustworthy
14
brands
people who
in
read it.
news.
Maybe.
I know.
I just have to say this. I understand your point, Shirley, but when I sit around a table with people who are otherwise well-read, otherwise well plugged in, otherwise, say they know media and journalism, I am still having the conversation about how this stuff gets done. And why did you do that? This is not something that everybody understands
No, that's
still.
true.
So any light that we can shed on transparency, I don't think is a wasted dollar. I just don't.